Alright, everybody, welcome back to Major Movies and TV, and today we're going to be talking about the new Henry Selick and Jordan Peele directed movie Wendell and Wild that just released onto Netflix. I'm going to go into a non-spoiler review and then do a spoiler review later on in the video. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, I will warn you ahead of time. But first, we're going to go into the non-spoiler review. Alright, so this movie stars Jordan Peele, Keegan-Michael Key, Lyric Ross, Sam Zalea, Tamara Smart, James Hong, Ving Rhames, Angela Bassett, Ramona Young, among other voice actors here, Gabrielle Dennis, David Harewood, and a couple others. So, this movie is the first stop-motion movie that I've seen come out in a while, in terms of, like, a major release, sort of. Even though this isn't gonna go to theaters, it's still like a major stop motion release because it's on Netflix. I kind of wish it went to theaters because this is actually a pretty good movie, and I feel like it would have done well in theaters. But, you know, it is what it is. I feel like there are certain things from Netflix that Netflix should consider to send to theaters, just because why not? Like, you do a limited theatrical release, and then you put it on Netflix at the same time. To me, personally, there's no downside to doing that. Especially when you know that your movie is just going to be on streaming after, you know. Unless it costs a lot for them to send the movie to theaters and have theaters play it. But, like, I don't know why Netflix focuses mainly on trying to get new subscribers through their service. Like, in order to get more subscribers to subscribe to your streaming service, you need to go out of the streaming service and into other media in order to get them to then be interested in the stuff on your streaming service. Okay, that's like saying, like, hey, I have this new movie here, but you can't see it until you pay money for the subscription, even though you don't know if you really want the subscription until after you see the movie. It's like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. You know, if you want to get people into your streaming service, you gotta send some stuff outside of the streaming service and for a limited time, and then be like, all right, you've seen it, you know you like the content, come to Netflix. And then, you know, after that point, you get more people in because now they already know that they like the content and they want to watch it again or whatever, or see what other new content you could bring out, you know. And they were able to get like a teaser of it, and I feel like this movie would have been good for that. Send it out to theaters and then drop it on Netflix. Like, it makes sense to me. But yeah, so this movie is like one of the first stop motion movies in a while, ever since, you know, the 2000s, when we had Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, Coraline, and all those types of movies. And honestly, it looks really good. Like, it's a really well made movie. The stop motion looks really well done, and it follows that kind of Paranorman Coraline vibe, and it's really cool. Do I think that this movie is as good as Paranorman and Coraline? No. No, it's not. The writing and the overall story is not as good as those movies. But the voice acting in this movie is done well, and it looks amazing. It does look really good. So I'm happy about that. The stop motion looks great. So yeah, they worked very hard on this movie in order to create it, and the result is very well done. So, other than that, it's directed very well. The characters are likable. You know, none of them are over the top annoying or anything like that. When I first saw the trailers for this movie, I was kind of worried that the main character would be kind of too cliche or too like edgy, you know, purposely edgy. But then she's not. She doesn't go over the top with anything. She's not like this psychopath. She's just kind of outcasted herself, and it works pretty well. You know, the main character is entertaining, but you know, and she also has some backstory to her and stuff like that I'll go over in the spoiler review. But yeah, so she's a good leading character. And while I think that the story might be a bit cliche at this point, you know, kid makes a deal with some demons in order to, you know, fix something in her past, which I'm not going to say, you know, because spoilers, but it is a little cliche, but it's not bad. There's nothing egregious about the writing in this film. There's nothing too cliche to the point where it feels unoriginal. It is definitely an original movie, an original story. You know, I think it is based off of like a book or something like that. I'm not sure. But, you know, still, it's an original movie done through an original story, and it feels like it, you know? The lore of this world is interesting, and the thing that I think saves this movie from being too cliche is the story other than the story that you see in the trailer. There's a story behind this movie, behind the story that they present, that is actually compelling and actually, you know, pretty much carries the movie and makes it non-cliche, because now there's something else there on top of the whole child makes a deal with some demons thing. And we'll get more into that in the spoiler section of my review, but luckily that plot behind the main plot saves the movie from being unoriginal, if that makes sense. So yeah, I did enjoy this movie. The supporting characters were entertaining. You know, the story was written well, the dialogue was done well, the voice acting was done well. I think that this is a good movie to go into that stop motion category of, you know, movies that kind of elevate that style of movie making. Like, this is a good representation of a stop motion movie. So yeah, that is essentially my non-spoiler review. I'm going to start talking about spoilers in a second, so if you don't want to be spoiled for Wendell and Wild, I suggest you go check it out. It's a pretty good movie, especially if you already have Netflix. I would suggest watching it. Honestly, I think it's a pretty solid movie for a kid to watch. There are some issues with it that I've had, but it's pretty good. It's got the issues that I have with it are small compared to issues I may have with other movies. Like, there's the issues I have with this movie are very minute. So I think it's a good movie to watch with your kids or whatever it is you want to do. I think kids would really like the style of the movie and the overall story. Even if they don't fully understand what's happening, they'd still like to be able to, they'd still find entertainment from it, pretty much. So I am going to go into spoilers now. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't keep watching. Go watch the movie and then come back to my video. Alright, 3, 2, 1, spoiler time, I'm going. Alright, so the movie starts out with this character, Kat. Now, Kat is being brought to this new religious school because she's a troubled kid. She's been in and out of juvie and all that ever since her parents died, and she has no friends and she doesn't really like people. Essentially, what happened was her and her parents were driving home one night in the rain. She's eating this apple. She bites into the apple and there's a worm in it. The worm scares her. She screams, and then the dad drives off the bridge. And then the mom is able to save her, but she couldn't save the parents. Like, the parents died by drowning. So ever since then, Kat has been causing problems. It's explained later in the movie that she went through a lot of bullying and she ended up in juvie because she pushed one of her bullies down the stairs. And, well, that's not explicitly said, but it's actually shown to you. And that's one thing I really like about this movie. They don't have to say everything. They just show stuff. They don't have to explain, certain things, but they are able to show it and you understand through the stop motion, and the stop motion looks so good that you actually want to look at it, And that's very good. I like that about this movie. So Kat is a part of this new school, and there are some preppy girls involved, and then there's one guy in the school even who is trans or whatever. And honestly, this part was one of the weakest parts of the movie because I don't understand. Like, I get wanting representation, and I also get that you don't want to overdo the representation and make the movie all about that. But I feel like there's, like, no point to that character being trans in the movie. There's no point to it. It's just there just to happen. It's mentioned twice during the movie, in like one line of dialogue each time, and then that's it. And then at that point, that whole part of that character is never mentioned again. So I'm like, is that really like the best representation you could come up with? As like, I'm like torn, because do I want the movie to be taken over by this message? No. But I also don't think that the representation that they did was really had a point other than it just being there. Maybe I'm just missing something, but like, the character, if you don't have those 2 lines of dialogue in the movie, the character is just a character named Raul. Like that, like, those 2 lines of dialogue are the most character development that this character gets. This character is just a supporting character. So I'm like, you couldn't give Raul some sort of backstory. You couldn't give him anything else other than 2 lines of dialogue where the girl in the movie, I forget her name, Soyvin, I think. I don't know, maybe Soyvon or whatever. She's like the main preppy girl, and she calls him Ramona, and then she's like, oh, I forgot. And I'm like, okay. And I forgot you're Raul. And I'm like, okay. And then, like, later on in the movie, the mom of Raul's mom is like this cop who's trying to prove that, so this town is like destroyed, okay? And barely anyone lives there anymore. And the mom is like a cop who's trying to prove that the town was destroyed due to arson by this company called Clax clan or something like that. The Clax clan, and they're like this privatized, these two characters that run privatized prisons. And turns out Soyvon's that's Soyvon's mom and dad, and it's believed that they are the ones that burnt down this brewery in the town in order to destroy it, in order to later buy it and try and build a privatized prison on it. So Raul's mom is trying to prove that that happened. But she needs witnesses, and unfortunately all the witnesses died. So, and then she's talking on the phone, and she's like, yeah, my son did this. And then she has this line of dialogue where she's like, no, my son, remember? And then that's it. And I'm like, I don't know if I want more or less at that point, because it just doesn't feel like there was much of a point to it. And you kind of just forget that that is a thing with Raul throughout the movie. It's not brought up again. There's no consequence or anything like that. There's no story behind it. It's just kind of a thing there. And I'm like, I don't know why you would want representation that is pointless, kinda, to the story. But then again, I'm like, do we really need that, a huge backstory, based on this character being trans? I don't think we do. I think it would be nice to just have the character, and you can have them be trans, but, like, give them some sort of backstory unrelated to that. Give them a purpose other than just that. Because it feels weird, it feels like it's just there to be there. Like this Raul character could have just been Ramona, and then that was it. Like it could have just not been there, and nothing would have changed. Nothing would be different. So that's one of the few, I'd say, like, weird parts of the movie where that was just kind of thrown in there, and I feel like that was a Netflix thing. I don't know, I haven't read the original story of Wendell and Wild, but I feel like that was definitely a Netflix thing, being like, hey, put this in there, because it didn't really need to be there. And one thing I liked about this movie otherwise is the fact that most of the main characters in this movie are black or half black or whatever, and it's never mentioned directly. None of them are like, oh, I'm this, and it doesn't need to be pointed out. It's just they are. And then they have the privatized prison story behind it, which, as we know, privatized prisons affect black people more in the real world. So it's there, and it's a kind of ironic because one of the people running a privatized prison is a black person. There's a black man and then a white lady, and then they're both horrible people running this privatized prison, and it's not mentioned. These characters aren't defined by their race. They are just them. They are just the characters. There's a good side and a bad side, and there's good characters and bad characters on that are every race and everything like that, and it doesn't need to be mentioned. It just is. It just happens. But the trans kid, for some reason, it needs to be mentioned. It needs to be brought up with 2 lines of dialogue. It's kind of weird, because other than, like, for me, that the representation for black people in this movie is a lot better done than the representation for this trans kid. It's just kind of non-existent. So I'm like, alright, that was a little weird. And that's probably the biggest negative I have about the movie, because other than that, it's not bad. So after that point, what happens is Kat starts seeing some visions of the future. She's able to save Savon because she saw the future and pushed her out of the way of a brick that fell off a building, and then saved her life and stuff. So she has the ability to kind of see the future. And so Yvonne Kat is like damaged because of her parents. And then in the school we have Sister Helly, who is essentially like the teacher there, and then we have Father Bess, who is the priest that runs the school. Now, Sister Helly is teaching a class. She asks Kat to come up and look at this octopus thing, and then during the class, Kat becomes infected by this thing that puts like this little like skull on her hand, and then it turns her into a Hell Maiden, which is essentially someone who can summon demons from hell. And there was some weird parts in this movie when it came to like censoring and stuff, because then we go into hell, essentially the underworld, and we have Wendell and Wild down there, and they are living on their father, who is Buffalo Belzer, who is this giant demon who pretty much has like this amusement park on his stomach. Okay, and the souls of the damned are in this amusement park being tortured for all eternity, essentially. And that's Buffalo Belzer's whole job. And then we have Wendell and Wild, and what they do is they live in Belzar's nose, okay? And then every day they go onto his head, and what they do is they replace they put this cream on his head to grow his hair so that he doesn't lose his hair. And they just do that every day. They just go up to his head, fill his head with hair with this magic hair growth cream. So they get the idea that maybe they can get someone to bring them to the living world in order to get money, in order to make their own version of the amusement park that's on their dad's stomach. So I'm like, alright, that's kind of an interesting thing there. So Wendell and Wild, what they like to do is they like to eat the cream and then get high off it. And then they get high, and then they notice Kat in a vision. And then, that's how they figure out, oh, okay, she's a Hell Maiden. She could summon us. So I'm like, alright. And this is kind of a weird thing with this movie. They're alright with characters getting high. They're alright with characters saying ass and stuff like that. Like, Kat says ass in this movie, I think, twice. And I think there was, like, one other swear they said or something like that. It wasn't anything crazy. Like, they didn't drop an F-bombs. But they, like, she said ass and then other things. And all that. But when Belzar is talking about these souls, he's like, I am the controller of the souls of the danged. I'm like, really? You couldn't say damned? You couldn't say damned? That bugged me. Okay, why'd you say danged? Okay, that just sounds childish. Like, don't say danged. Just say damned. You already said ass later on in the movie. You already are, like, having characters get high off this cream. Okay, just say damned. And they actually, that's the other word, hell. They do say hell in the movie. But for some reason they can't say souls of the damned. I don't understand that. But it only happens a couple times, so it's a little odd. I just don't know why they say danged instead of damned. That bugged me. But, so Wendell and Wild are able to trick Kat into summoning them into the real world by promising that they'll bring her parents back to life. And so Kat believes them. She steals this weird teddy bear that allows her to summon them into the real world, and Wendell and Wild are able to figure out that the hair growth cream that they use to grow the hair can also bring dead things back to life for a limited amount of time. Now, at first, they don't know about the limited amount of time, but that they are able to bring dead things back to life. So, Kat summons them, brings them back to life, and during this, what happens is Father Best is killed off by the two Klax clan people. You know, the people that want to privatize prison. They kill off Father Best because he doesn't want to sell his school. He doesn't want to give up on it. He wants to bring more kids into the school and have it be successful. So they kill him. They hit him with a golf club and then shove him into the water. Well, Wendell and Wild are able to bring Father Best back from the dead as like a test, because they had never actually tested the cream on humans. They just kind of assumed. So they test on Father Best and bring him back to life, and he's essentially like working with Wendell and Wild throughout the movie. Now, at this point, Kat is upset because Wendell and Wild haven't brought her parents back, so Raul steals the cream from Wendell and Wild and then does it himself. He brings Kat's parents back from the dead, and they're alive now. And during this time, Father Best and Wendell and Wild set up this deal with the Klax Clan people in order to bring back people from the dead that would vote to bring the privatized prison into the town of, I forgot the name of the town, my bad, but, so they need a certain number of votes in order to legally bulldoze the town and then put up this privatized prison. So Wendell and Wild work to bring these people back to life so that they can vote to bring in the privatized prison. And like I said, everything about this movie looks really good. So, like, the detail they put into the dead bodies, the details they put into everything, it all looks good. And I kind of find it funny how in the human world, Wendell and Wild are essentially just Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key. That's who they are. You know, they look exactly like them. So, that was kind of funny. But, so, these guys are brought back to life. They go and they vote. And then they vote to bring in the privatized prison, which allows the Klax Clan or whatever to win, essentially. So they can legally bulldoze the city and put up their prison. And in order to get Wendell and Wild and Father Best to work with them, the Klax Clan offers them enough money for Wendell and Wild to build their amusement park, and then for Father Best to keep his school running. Now, it's explained near the end of the movie that the reason that they do this is because they want the school to be successful so that the town brings in more juvenile kids, and then they want the school to set them up to fail so that they end up in the prison, which, again, social commentary, but it makes sense. Alright, so, and it actually helps elevate the story a little bit. Like, there's like, and this is that other story that I was talking about that kind of elevates this movie past just a kid making a deal with some demons. And it actually really works. So, they realize that they have been betrayed by the Klax Clan because they just gave them Klax money, which is completely worthless outside of the prison. So, but that's later on in the movie. After, so, right around the time when Raul revives Kat's parents, Kat agrees to swear allegiance to Wendell and Wild. And then that's where she puts her hand over her mouth, and then the skull on her hand talks for her, and she's like, oh, I swear allegiance, or whatever. And then it's like this thing where it controls her. Like, it controls her hand and makes her do things for him. I kind of wish they went a little farther with that, because in all reality, none of the things that she has to do for Wendell and Wild actually serves. Like, she has to get them food, and then that's essentially it. Like, there's no other thing there. Like, there's, like, it doesn't feel like she's being forced into slavery. It just feels like this annoying thing with her hand that's keeping her from seeing her parents. Because she does get reunited with her parents, but then Sister Helly is like, no, we need to stop this. So Sister Helly, she is also a Hell Maiden with, like, this power to go into the floor and then appear in smoke. It's kind of cool. But she, like, brings Kat to this janitor who hunts demons with Sister Helly, and then they do this thing where they, like, blood bond together, and then they're in this other room where Kat has to fight off her memories, and then there's this big memory monster that she has to destroy herself and then learn to accept. And this part looked cool. Like, the visuals in this movie, again, are very well done. They're very good. So, that part was cool. So she pretty much learns to accept her demons and all the bad memories that have been holding her back, and it breaks that allegiance to Wendell and Wild. So, another main point of this movie, after all this, well, kind of after all this, but the main point in this movie is that the Claxons didn't want Wendell and Wild to bring anyone back from the dead other than the voters, because they didn't want anyone to talk about how they burnt down the brewery that destroyed the town. And if they find out that Raoul revived Kat's parents, then they would want their money back. Now, the money is useless anyway. So they kidnap Kat's parents, and now they're all at this graveyard. And Wendell and Wild are trying to rebury the parents. Kat stands up to them, and Sister Helly does too. They stand up to the demons, fight back, and then, you know, these demons are not like fighters. They're not even like super evil. They just kind of want things, and they're very tricky. But they're not, honestly, they're not even tricky. They're just kind of there, not gonna lie. Wendell and Wild are decent characters, but they're not mischievous. At least not to the point where they actually seem like a threat. They're not violent. They're not anything other than just kind of, hey, like, I'm here. Which is a little bit weird. I expected the demons to be a bit more mischievous, but they're more stupid than anything. So, you know, there's that. So, they all kind of are in this graveyard, and then Buffalo Belzer, figures out what's going on with Wendell and Wild, and then he shoots up to the surface, and then Belzer is chasing them. Again, another set of scenes that look visually very good. And then pretty much what they find out is that this janitor who hunts demons hunted down Belzer's other kids, you know, because Wendell and Wild are Belzer's kids. And Belzer's like, well, I just wanted to, you know, be a good dad, but I kept, you know, losing all my kids and stuff, and I didn't want to lose you two, which was kind of weird. It kind of came out of nowhere, because Belzer's character did not seem to have any sympathy before this point, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I just wanted to be a good dad, and I'm like, alright, that's a little weird. But then, so the janitor is like, we'll give you back your kids if you just kind of leave us alone or whatever if you don't take us all into the underworld. And he's like, all right, yeah, we'll do that. And then he gets all of his kids back and then just goes into the underworld again. Except for Wendell and Wild are still up in the human world. So so what happens is at this point the Klaxons are getting ready to bulldoze the town, and all of the main characters there, they stand up against these bulldozers that are gonna try to bulldoze the town. Now, something I thought was weird, the Klaxons had the dead people, the voters, driving the bulldozers, and they had no idea how to. They were just kind of doing it, but they didn't really understand it. And I'm like, really? You don't have people hired to do the bulldozers? That's weird. Why are you using these dead people? But alright, I guess. So they fight back. They end up destroying the bulldozers. And they essentially save the town. Cat, sees that the town is going to be destroyed. And then has a vision later on where it's like, no, it's going to be rebuilt. And they find out that the cream doesn't last forever, so Kat's parents are gonna be going back into the dead world, and Raoul gives the last of the cream to his mother so that she can bring back witnesses from the dead to put the Klaxons back put the Klaxons in prison for murder and stuff. Which, again, another thing with this movie, they have murder, they have arson, and all this, but they can't say damned. They can't say souls of the damned, they say danged. I'm like, really? But, alright. It constantly wants to, tout cross that line into not being a straight-up kids movie, but then it also wants to keep itself in that kids PG-13 range, and is very weird. So, yeah, Wendell and Wild and everyone, they help to stop the Klaxons. The Klaxons are stopped. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the end of the movie. Kat's parents go away. And, that's it. So, yeah, that's the main story of the movie. I have obviously left out certain details because I'm trying to make my reviews shorter, so they're a little more watchable. I don't want hour-long reviews, but sometimes I just get into it and I talk for way too long. So, yeah. So I left out some parts of it. Go watch the movie for yourself. But that's the main story, and overall, I feel like the story has a lot going on. There's a lot of different characters and a lot of, backstabbing, and you kind of don't really know who the bad guys are until halfway through, or, near the end of the movie when you meet the Klaxons or whatever. So, that's, midway through the movie. Wendell and Wild are not the bad guys of the movie like I thought they'd be. They're honestly not even bad people. They just kind of want to build this dream fair, and they do eventually get to do that in the underworld, and they're like, no matter where you go, upstairs or downstairs, you'll have fun at this dream fair. So that's good. And but yeah, Wendell and Wild are not bad guys. They're just kind of entrepreneurs. They just want to build their dream fair. The priest wanted his school to be successful and was willing to do anything for that. And the priest had a good performance. I liked his character. James Hong did a good job with that character. But it was just kind of like a thing where he's not really a bad guy, but he did bad things in order to get, funding for the school. So, yeah, it wasn't what I expected, but in certain ways it was better than I expected. I expected sort of the cliche, oh, she made a deal with some demons and now needs to break it. But no, it's actually more about, privatized prisons and stuff like that, which kind of did help the movie. You know, the real monsters are, you know, the Klaxons, the rich people. So yeah, I did enjoy this movie. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, especially if you already have Netflix. If you like stop motion, definitely check it out. It's well written, a good story. Other than a few nitpicks, there's not really much wrong about it. So yeah, that's my review on Wendell and Wild. Go check it out and let me know what you think down in the comments below. And everyone, have a good day.